So I'm somewhat cynical, I'm somewhat uppity. I actually read RFCs, unlike most people who seem to implement them. Oh, and my colleague Patrick Thomas, whose bullet point has also disappeared for some unknown reason, is another security consultant, pen tester at NeoHapsis. He has an application security focus. I have a focus on not focusing. I refuse to specialize. Those bullets, they are appearing here. Alright, so we'll see if we can get more artifacts and craziness as we go. MultiPath TCP, there's some changes to the TCP protocol that fundamentally change how networking works and how we have understood it to work for the last, 40 years. Things are changing, we need to be ready. And we can use it to break things today, but we have to prepare for it. While you can break things today, you can use these techniques, these tools, these protocols, we have to be ready for the long haul. Because if we're not, we're in trouble. But it doesn't change everything. If you're talking about layer 4, which is the bullets there, yes, it's totally the same. Basically the same if you're at layer 4. Sorry, if you're not at layer 4, I'm getting excited. If you're not at layer 4, it is basically the same. If you are at layer 4, it is different. And you really need to buckle up because things get a little more interesting. To do that, I've got an example here. A very simple curl to a web page. Requesting a web page from a web server on IP address. So we are requesting the web page on 164 from 165 with curl. And you can see here we actually have the response come through as well. However, if we open that up with Wireshark, we follow the TCP stream and we store the response. But it doesn't appear when we follow the TCP stream. Which is really quite odd. Because again, we saw it there. So why did we see it? Because this makes absolutely no sense. And this is where I take my coat off dramatically. This makes no sense at all. So that's a very simple example of how MultiPath TCP changes things. And let's talk about it. But before we can really talk about some changes, we have to understand what was the motivation for this. Was some dude just bored, wrote an RFC, or were there some actual motivations, market pressures, technology reasons for doing this? And it turns out there actually were. Because current TCP has some limitations. It doesn't support use cases for high availability particularly well. People end up using other solutions to do that. And also, no it doesn't. It does not handle aggregation at all. If you have 5 1 megabit links, you have 5 1 megabit links. You cannot aggregate them with TCP alone. Which is a bit of a problem as we get to a hyper-connected, hyper-mobile world. Because you also can't multi-home. If you have multiple addresses, you can't use them in the same connection. And mesh networking is just a real nightmare to do on TCP alone. When things are shifting, things are moving, networks aren't consistent, equal cost multipath, all of that just makes things interesting, shall we say. MultiPath TCP extends TCP to add some of the functionality and some of those features that I just alluded to. It works over existing infrastructure because it is TCP. It is MultiPath TCP, it is. I'll show you why in a moment, but it is normal TCP with a bonus. Because nothing understands it. It looks like TCP, it quacks like TCP, but it's actually a goose. It really doesn't make any sense if you come to it with your existing assumptions. Especially with security tools. Our security tools have fundamentally broken the way that trust works on the internet. The Surf paper, 1974, says end-to-end, mutation-resistant, I believe it says irrespective of path. If your security tool is trying to inspect or modify it, it is breaking the fundamental trust model of the internet. It's end-to-end. Now, you could argue the internet is no longer what we started with, and that's good argument. But irrespective, the protocol was not designed with security tools in mind as we use them. To be clear, MultiPath TCP is a really, really good thing. I really do want it to succeed. I really like it. But we're not ready. So if you've got this sort of thing and say your mobile phone, it's great, because you can change addresses, you can aggregate addresses. Nothing drops out as you switch between Wi-Fi and cellular. If you're on the edge of a Wi-Fi network that's dropping in and out, your connections don't completely fail, they just work. From a use case perspective, that's wonderful. From a data perspective, that's wonderful because it optimizes towards the faster path. But if you're coming at it as a security professional, as a network security operator with a very totalitarian approach where you own everything and you control everything, this is going to be a nightmare. An absolute nightmare. So that's some background. What got me to thinking about this? I was browsing Hacker News, as a few people probably do here when I'm bored. I came across a page, which linked to another page, which sort of linked to another one, another one. Anyway, and then, oh look, a whole lot of media attention, including, Registered doing their thing. But after that, it was really strange what happened, because it was exactly this. Silence. It was exactly nothing. We had some fundamental changes to a major protocol that the infrastructure of the world depends upon. No one was talking about it. And not only were these changes occurring, they were happening faster than we've ever seen before. And no one was talking about it. However, regarding the security of MultiPath TCP, the researchers who developed this did a really good job. Put a lot of work on threat models, and the thing itself, it has some issues, but given their goals, it was a really good job. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm not here to talk about the thing itself, as much as you may think that. I'm here to talk about the things around it. The security environment, the routing environment, the infrastructure that depends upon TCP acting as it always has. That is what was not nearly looked at enough. And indeed, that's what this session is about. What can MultiPath TCP? What does it mean for security today? And what could it or a similar technology mean a decade from now? When one of these technologies is in widespread use, whether it's this one or something else, we have to change the way we do things. So while this talk is about MultiPath TCP, that is not the takeaway. The takeaway is not that this thing is a problem. The takeaway should be that as soon as you start splitting traffic up across paths, as soon as you start using mobility properly, the current network security approaches begin to struggle. And because this was released in Black Hat, a couple of proof of concepts and tools and technical detail as well, which I may or may not get to given our time. So that was the really high-level background. Moving into a technical introduction. MultiPath TCP is it's an addition to TCP. But TCP, the fundamental transmission control protocol that we all use with all of our network communications, has an IP and a port at one end and an IP and a port at the other. That is not host to host. That is interface to interface. In the past, that has not mattered, but now it matters a lot. Because suddenly, one host has multiple interfaces, has multiple paths. And the presumptions we've had of end-to-end, host-to-host, they're not the same thing, and we've got to stop treating them that way. IPv6 did some of this, but we have to be ready. So a MultiPath TCP connection is defined by a connection ID. That's never sent across the network. That is cryptographically calculated into some checksums, which is messy. But ignoring what a connection ID and how it's transited, what MultiPath TCP is. It is a layer strapped into the options field of TCP that enables you to aggregate, associate multiple logical TCP addresses towards one high-level data flow. That is all it is. It is an abstraction layer on top of TCP that abstracts you away from interface impedance. Same way we've had in lower layers, but now this is done at layer 4. And they designed it with a few particular things in mind. They designed it to be backwards compatible so that they didn't have to reinvent the internet. SCTP had some big advantages in some of this stuff. However, it never really took off because it couldn't get the network effects outside of certain spaces. Because backwards compatibility matters. No one wants to rip out their infrastructure for a thing that may or may not take off. Backwards compatibility is key. In the same way, no one wants to rip out their infrastructure for something that ruins their existing systems. The performance has to be better than now. Or at least as good. It can be no worse than now. And of course, the security has to be less than or equal to now. And in the past, that philosophy has not always ended well. WEP, wide equivalent privacy. Yeah, good luck there, guys. But the principle is sound. When you're trying to replace something, you should be no worse than it. To give you a simple example, a simple walkthrough, let's bring up a connection. So here we have one connection, end-to-end. All right, that is a TCP connection. Could be a MultiPath TCP connection. When there is only one, it is effectively the same. Okay, so notice here we have one interface on the server. That's an interface. Over here we have two. That will matter in a moment. So we bring a second network up and a second connection. That entire thing is a MultiPath TCP connection. Two TCP connections strapped together and associated to give you one data flow. In it, because you can also throw them across one path. You don't just have to break one through a path, you can break them up wherever you wish, in any combination you like. And you can map the data across them in any combination you like too. I'll get to that in a moment. Because the sender of the packet is who chooses where the data is mapped to and where that data is sent. There is no protocol level routing, congestion control. This is all entirely the role of the implementation. The implementation decides what goes where. And because it's designed to be resilient, if any subset of those connections drops and one remains open, the whole connection stays. It's designed to be resilient, which is really good from a usability and certain business models perspective, and terrifying if you're trying to chop heads off the hyper with your IDS. Because not only can you keep going, you can re-end it. And in some implementations, it'll hold the state open after they will close. So you can rejoin a connection after some period of time, even though you killed them all. It is designed to be resilient. Seamless roaming and high availability. So I said it was a TCP option. And to bring that up with one of these standard protocol diagrams, which goes through it here. So look, standard TCP here, standard data here. This is what we do. We insert this additional options here. And that options here is entirely with MultiPath TCP is communicated. That's what it exists of. It is an option bolted on to bring this wonderful functionality that we're not ready for. And you know, you can also open this up in Wireshark. If you do that, you can break out the TCP packet, break down the options field, and look, there it is right there, MultiPath TCP. It's got all the, you can break it down, you can range maps, you checksums. It's done all that for you. It will not reassemble data across multiple streams, but it will let you read the header. I've done that manually, it's a pain. 3 weeks of my life, I'm never going to get back trying to figure out that checksum. Alright, so how was it implemented? I've said there's an option, but what does that mean? How do you use it? How do you use it is use it with what's called subtypes. So you have an option, and within that option it has certain other flags it can set to do particular operations. Those are subtypes. So the first one of the 8 that are currently defined, I'm simplifying this for anyone who's going to get pedantic. The 8 that are currently defined, MultiPath capable, that flag says I support this. That's all it does. And there's join. So if you already have a MultiPath connection set up, you can send in another connection with a join request, saying I want to join this connection ID. It will then associate if you authenticate correctly. That's what a join does. Data sequence signal, DSS, that is what data is mapped where. So you know, I've got this, map this to that part of the TCP sequence space on that stream, and on that stream, and on that stream. That's what DSS does. It maps data to the TCP flows. Add address. There is address advertisement built into the protocol. I've connected to another system. I say, okay, I've got this other address. Could you connect to it, please? That is designed for natural reversal, deliberately. And for certain other use cases. Remove address, which is exactly the inverse. Within that stream, could you please drop that using that address, please? There are some others which I'm not going to discuss just yet because they get a little bit into the detail. So there are a lot of implementations out there. It's already in every iPhone. Siri uses this. It's already in every Mac running Yosemite. This is in Yosemite. I managed to use it, but it's there. I've verified it's there. I've verified the class, I've verified the source. It's there. I'm not sure what they're going to use it for. This stuff is rolling out. It's already in hundreds of millions of devices. It's already on most networks that are not blocking Siri. And so the primary reference implementation is the Linux one. And the Linux one has a couple of ways of handling paths and flows and stuff in it. For mesh, every possible interface, factorial, and in-depth ports. So I said you can have multiple over one path. This is just N across one path. Very, very simple. Very, very good for testing. But remember, so I said this is TCP. This is all in the TCP stack. Your application does not need to know this. I can run Metasploit over this today. I have done it. As long as the endpoints understand this, this is TCP socket layer. Entirely transparent. If you're making decisions based upon the interface address, you might fall apart. But if you're just setting up a socket and using it, this is transparent. This just works. Backwards compatible. I mentioned end ports. As I said, you said n different connections, in this case 3, across one path. That's very simple. The more complicated one, when you start using the full mesh, is far more interesting to look at, because previously we had a few parallel paths, and now, we have everything to interface 1, everything to interface 2, everything to interface 3. That is one data flow. That's simply what I'm saying. 4 interfaces. That's one data flow. That's one TCP connection that is MultiPath TCP enabled. And I've added this slide in because a few people tend to push on this at the end. The path manager handles where packets can be sent, like what are the valid routes. It doesn't actually define what is sent when. That's a different component. And we'll get to that later. And so you dive a little bit deeper still. As I said, it's the TCP handshake with additional details. That capable flag, that's authentication credentials. And when you take those and you do some data sequence mapping, it does some pseudo-header, some authentication, based upon keys that are only communicated in that initial handshake. If you do not get that initial handshake, you cannot properly add data mapping, you cannot properly pass checksums. Because it's authenticated at the start when there's a send. You'll join, says, I've got this, I want to join that, here's my challenge response answer. But in the same way, so in TCP you have the reset flag, and that shuts down a connection. You have fast close, which is analogous, but it shuts down all the connections. However, that is authenticated. So if you didn't capture that handshake, you cannot reset this flow entirely. You have to sit there killing every TCP flow. And good luck with that. And as I said, the packet sender decides where the data goes. Again, highly important. The most important thing. I don't care what I am supposed to do, I care what I can do. One of the things we've released so far is a cheat sheet which goes through some of this technical detail in a much more nuanced form than an RFC. And if you could get a chance to look at that, if you actually want to sit down and do these calculations, that'll step you through them. I said earlier that iOS is using it. Nearly every Apple device speaks of Siri. And that's by far the biggest implementation of this. That was what got me looking at this. Because it's in iOS 7, it's also in some other experimental stuff, and a few really interesting things. But in terms of internet scale, mainly Siri right now. And there's still a huge number of implementations. You can get this, either you can install this, or all of these systems are listed here. It is either on them, or they are aware of it. Whether that is as simple if you see this, kill it, whether that is fully implement this and enable us to tweak it. Every one of those vendors there has some degree of awareness of this in various either configuration or options. I can give you details later. Apple is fully implemented, but for only limited purpose. Some of the other vendors there, Cisco, when I last checked, I worked with them, I unchecked them a little while, was just looking for it and turning it on or off. They were not doing any actual implementation. Citrix has implemented this in one of their load balances. And of course, like any protocol, it's not for Windows. And if it doesn't take off Windows, it may or may not take off in the consumer space, so maybe that's a killer. However, I probably count that if this takes off in mobile devices, tablets, smartphones, that's probably enough, given the current state of the internet and the business models. And as I said, it's in Yosemite. This is a dump I did in my terminal. I dumped the system options, and then all the MultiPath TCP flags and configuration options. If you look at the XMU source, it's there. It's in private code right now, so the average developer can't easily get it turned on. But I presume it's there for a reason. It was not there in 10.9. It is there in 10.10. I've not managed to find what they're using it for, if anything. but for some reason it has been inserted into that kernel. And if you look at the LinkedIn of a lot of the people who were developing this protocol in the past have been named in RFCs, their LinkedIn now says Apple. That may or may not be related. I don't know. Because, Apple doesn't talk. So I've seen these implementations. It's actually pretty easy to get this and play with it. In particular, the Linux implementation has Debian packages, has simple configuration steps. You can set this up in about 10 minutes. If you go to the reference implementation website, MultiPath TCP.org, it gives you the steps. You can also get that working in Kali. However, it recompiles your kernel. So if anything is dependent upon a specific kernel version, things start to break. That said, not everything is, and a lot of the tools work over this. I've run Durbust over this, I've run Metasploit over this, I've run Burp over this, and many of the other major tools. Because they do not need to understand it. They just need to open sockets. There's also Vagrant and Debian packages up if you're more of a DevOps type. But the most technical thing which I played with, because I didn't want to look at the C code, because the SDC code is a pain, is escape implementation that is available. Escape, I haven't figured out how to say that yet. But when you've got that, you can do raw packet crafting with this. It does a lot of that stuff for you. This is what we build a lot of our further tools on, because it enables this really granular control of what is happening at a very, very granular level. And there's his GitHub. This didn't get nearly enough attention when it came out. He did his master's thesis in this and then moved on to do something else with his life. But that is one of the best things you can get if you want to learn about this and play with it. Otherwise, you're delving into BSD-C code, which is a real pain. Alright, now talk about the thing itself. Let's start talking through what are the effects, what does this mean? So, the first and most obvious effect you've probably all already picked up, and that's cross-path fragmentation. In the past, we have fragmented linearly. We get data coming along stream, we chunk it here, 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 and that breaks up signatures, and that does a degree of IDS evasion. This is different. This is not chunking it linearly. This is chunking it this way. And that's very, very different to what we've seen in most protocols in the past, particularly with TCP, because it's the whole point of MultiPath TCP. So I also mentioned agility, and that's, again, a wonderful thing from a usability perspective, the ability to remap and change addresses as you go through a session, as you go through a connection. But in the past, that's not generally held true within a data stream. Resilience. You can't kill this very easily at all, which is really good from a user, terrible if you're trying to kill it. It has additional checksums, as I mentioned earlier. That sounds simple until you play with it. Until every subflow is killed, it keeps going. And not only does it address agility, it also does reverse connections. That advertisement. It is a protocol with reverse connections. And because of those four things, because of that cross-path fragmentation, because of that ability to move your addresses around as a moving target, because of that resilience and reverse connections, because of those four things that are really fundamental, if your security tools are requiring any of these basic assumptions that have held true in the past, you're going to have a hard time. So if you've relied on the ability to seal the data in a TCP stream, it's not going to work properly. If you've relied on the ability to associate a logical session to an IP address alone, this sort of shift, this protocol or another, is going to start breaking things. If you're trying to kill connections, you're trying to chop heads off a Hydra, it's not going to work. And if you're trying, and this is the fun, if you're trying to differentiate your clients from your servers based upon the initial connection, that is wrong in this world. That is no longer true. That who connects to who defines client and server. This breaks that. These attacks today are extremely practical because nothing knows what's going on. However, both endpoints need to control it. So if you're talking to yourself, it's fine. If you're trying to do a pen test, not so much. Because there's not much supports it yet. In a world where everything supports this sort of equivalent protocol, it's a little less feasible to do these attacks in a naive way. But things have to change because there are whole new attacks we can bring along when everything understands this. A simple example that comes to mind is I said there are cryptographic checksums. You can just start throwing a large amount of traffic with invalid checksums. And that's a very asymmetric processing load. And the same way that you have all these connections, there's a little state tracking load on an observer. It's fine view as a user. But if you're tracking 10 million connections, each of them is fragmented 25 times, things get a lot more complicated. And at the same time, though, you can mitigate some of these things. Because if you know what's going on, you can look for them. Your anomaly detection might know what fragmented traffic looks like, or what non-pathological fragmented traffic looks like. Because there are certain things that change with flows in multi-path programs. So I said in the past, I'm not worried about what we should do, I'm worried about what we can do. Most implementations are not going to send a byte here, a byte here, a byte here. That stuff is weird. Most are going to do it in an efficient way. So that I can do that, and if you're looking for it, you'll see it. So a pathological client will do pathological things. A non-pathological client, over time you can model it. Packets into the sides, as I said, you can keep modeling it and nothing's stopping us. So the simple example that I did a year ago is really, really very simple in this space. Is that going to play out? No? Alright, let me bring it to you. Oh no, it's going to work. Alright, so this is coming across Snort, they could have been any other IDs. Every single one I looked at could not handle this sort of attack, this sort of traffic. And that's what looked at. And that is entirely to be expected. You know, I could give you a code demo, but who cares if it doesn't know how to deal with that. And in that way. So use security argument because it's far simpler to set up working IDS implementations for a demo in that way. Alright. Bring up the terminal, and we tail the store logs for a particular alert workflow. Very, very simple in this case. You don't actually need to see these details, the text is perhaps too small. Okay, so we bring up our fragmenter, and we only fragmented, in this case, one path. That is all it is. This is still multi-path, but it's just one path. Open that connection, we send it, and the alert fires up the top. Alright, so that's the degenerate case. That's a very simple case. What happens if we fragment it to, say, 5? If we fragment it to 5, it looks much the same in terms of the data communicated, but the way it flows across the network and what the IDS expects change. So connection 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Send the data through, and then close it. Alright. And this is level 5. Now this is not a weakness of the IDS. This is the nature of the way an IDS what? It's due to the nature of the way an IDS works. And I lost my slide. Let's go find that.
Question.
Yes.
So did it split over 5 different connections, or just over one pipe?
In this case, it was one pipe.
One pipe, but different.
Yeah. So you can see here, well, before I scroll across, the source and destination addresses are the same, the ports are not. So open up the TCP, pull out the HTTP traffic. We follow the stream, and you see a nonsensical HTTP session, because the rest of that data was sent across another path. In this case, this demonstrates what I said about non-pathological, because I control the red, I didn't control the blue, and it was just a standard multi-path enabled HTTP server. So we can understand strange fragmentation, it just doesn't do it. There we go. So obviously this has implications for perimeter security as well. How would you like an I'll get there, this is real, an outbound incoming connection. If you can't determine your client's real service based upon the connection setup direction, you can get there. So if we set up a multi-path TCP connection, first connection, we send a SYN, alright, looks like TCP, we send an SYN. Still a TCP with an option, we strap it in. And then an app. Okay, what? It's TCP, what's your point? Well, what if inside that session we advertise another address? And then the internal host may set up a connection to that address. None of the implementations do, even though the protocol specifies it, but it may. And then you get this red connection. So the question is that outgoing or incoming? It's actually not a sensible question in this case. Because you're talking about the connection or the data flow. I'm really confused about this. I've looked at this for a while. I have no idea what's going on. And because I'm going to remember to say it, this is the place where I got my really terrible joke. So suddenly we care about more than just original sin. Like 5 people got it. I'm sorry. I had to. Alright, moving on to network management before I talk myself into more craziness. So if you're trying to monitor your traffic flows and you don't understand what's going on with MultiPath TCP, you get really crazy things like a drunken spider. That is one web browser going to CNN.com via one web proxy, both of them MultiPath TCP enabled, both of them with 3 interfaces each. Okay, so obviously that's not a tenable solution. What happens if you start to associate them? Alright, so your spider starts sobering up, and I miss some letters for some reason, but it still doesn't make a whole lot of sense because you've got the web, but you don't have the flow at a logical level. If you map it, if you start associating those addresses by knowing which host has what and which connection is going where, things look a bit more interesting. That is, again, that is one example of a TCP connection. That's multipath fragmentation in action, multi-stream fragmentation in action. Obviously, this is not what we want to deal with when you're managing a network. So, how do you deal with this? Well, first of all, you make sure your people know it exists and they know to look for it. At a very simple level. Then you make sure your tools. There's a couple of aspects here. There's to know if they support it, and you're going to set it up and not know it, and introduce this into your environment. And there's also to understand, does it know how to interpret it? So if your tool is setting up connections, it has to do one, if not, it has to do the other. Your architectures are really the key to this. Like any other sort of thing which messes with inspection, your key is to bottleneck and to terminate. Set up a proxy, force everything through a small subset of points which you control. If you do not do that, this will really, really be a problem. Alright, so we released a scanner that does a couple of things. It tests the device, it interrogates the device to see if it supports it. And it does that by, basically it says, I'd like to join your connection, and it's just some garbled ID. The server says no. Alright, then it supports MultiPath TCP. The server says yes, it has no idea what you're talking about, and it's just nodding, so it obviously doesn't. And that's the way that works. I'm going to zoom through that for time. As I said, transparent proxies, like any other interception, are the only real way to deal with this sort of situation. Whether I've got MultiPath TCP support or not, you care about getting that data, you don't usually care about how it gets to you. It's viable options to strip the rules, but the risk there is if you do that, it's going to bias towards other paths. If you're stripping MultiPath TCP out of one path in an already set up connection, it's going to drop you and use everyone else. Which is great for the user. Really annoying for you because you've just sent them away from you. If you want to track and modify this, you have to capture that handshake. You have to perform non-trivial calculations. This is not a simple thing to do. Because there's a lot of state to track. However, the very fact that this is hard to accept, hard to understand, is also great for a different use case. Coming at this from a privacy perspective. You know, I may not trust my ISP or my cellular company. They probably don't like each other much either until they acquire each other, and so I should use their business models against them. The chance of 2 paths getting breached is to some degree lower than the chance of 1 getting breached. That may not be a lot of difference, but it is something. And if you start to look at that model into a future, you can do things like split path, split trust cryptography, where you split up keys, or you chain across paths to ensure if you do not get every path, you get no data. You can start hopping around for privacy as well in a way that we haven't been able to do efficiently in the past. And there have been some research efforts into that already. I'm going to skip over those. So the things I've been playing with regarding this particular implementation. So Yosemite, I couldn't get it to work, I gave up. Doing it over Tor. Do not do this if you're worried if there's a good reason you use Tor. Tor is very, very tightly configured for a reason. Couldn't quite get it working, but you can split traffic across Tor circuits. It's an idea to look at. I wouldn't put my life on the line right now. I wouldn't mess with Tor because I don't want to kill people. And regarding the tools I've already released, one thing I looked at doing was speeding them up. In this case, the L2 sockets in Scapy rather than not. And again, I got distracted because I have other things to do, which is what I'm going to get to. And the things I've been playing with since are not MultiPath TCP. They're generalizing these attacks, techniques, and tools to the application layer. Because there's nothing stopping me fragmenting in different ways, like HTTP. I've written fragmenters in HTTP that pull a binary down in chunks across multiple paths or across the same path. HTTP range requests do that. You can do these fragmentations in other protocols. That is just one. Applying digital radio techniques with multiple carriers, let's start frequency hopping across them. Let's start jumping. Let's start multiplexing them. This gets really, really fun, and I still don't know what to do with it. And it's really, really awesome, and I just, play with that stuff. Play with that stuff when you get a chance, because the multipath communications are coming. Whether this or something else, and they're really, really fun and really, really good. But it confounds our business and our security models. We aren't ready. If we want to continue doing security as we always have, we're just not ready. And so we have to prepare. And if you want to play with this, I know I've raced through this, there is a challenge up at that URL which has a PCAP, which you need to extract an image from. Simple traffic card. We also have the solution up because this was released a while back. There's a few ways to do it. The simplest one is up there. I can break that solution, but for now, it is the best heuristic solution. So moving on. I know I raced through that. Questions? Back.
Does that mean the clients always have to be listening on multiple ports?
So the question was, do the clients need to be listening on multiple ports? No. The clients, they send their connections out, and if they ask to get connected back, it connects on the same address. So the same one that it came from. So if you send it out of 5265, it comes back to 5265. So you don't have to listen, you know where it's coming in. Any others? At the back, Pearce.
You mentioned that Siri is using MultiPath TCP. Do you expect there to be sort of a much more widespread adoption of it, or was there something specific about that made it good?
So the reason it's interesting is because it was such an immediate deployment. Going from nothing to hundreds of millions is a huge jump. Is this going to crash and burn? Maybe. I think this is something very similar. It's going to take off in the next decade at some point. Right now, this isn't a concern, but the techniques can still be used. So we have to be ready, and even if it's not this, it's going to be something else, because there is large user and business pressures to do this sort of thing. We're already seeing with certain mobile carriers bringing out their various solutions for roaming, for cellular, calls being done over Wi-Fi. All of these use cases tend to be very friendly to an implementation such as this, particularly if standards compliant. Right now, there's not a lot of standards compliant implementations. But we need them. Anyone else? All right. I think we're done then.